Now, South Africa's unemployment rate dropped by 0.2 percentage points to 32.7% in the fourth quarter of 2022, largely driven by activity in finance, private households and trade. Business reporter Ntokozo Khumalo is standing by to help us unpack some of the data that was presented by the Statistician General Ntokozo this morning. Can we safely say that this is some good news?
Good day, Duduzile. Well, whether it's good news is up for debate, but it does certainly show that the economy is moving past those COVID-19 pandemic levels, where, of course, we saw a lot of jobs being shared as organizations were scaling down. And I am now joined by the Statistician General, Risinge Maluleko, who's going to unpack the numbers that he presented to us this morning. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Encouraging to see the unemployment rate show a drop in the fourth quarter of 2022. Could you talk us through what sectors really drove that? We saw finance, private households and trade, which in the third quarter actually shared some jobs. What insights can we get from that?
Ntokozo, I'm the Statistician General. I don't get excited by any number because sometimes I bring good news and sometimes I bring news that is not so good. So any number is a number for us. But specifically, what we are seeing is that for the fourth quarter in a row, as a country, we are creating employment. First quarter 2022, we created 370,000 jobs. Second quarter 2022, 648,000 jobs. Third quarter, 204,000 jobs. And in this quarter that we are reporting on,
we apologize for that interruption in feed. We'll get you more detail from our reporter Ntokozo Khumalo speaking to the Statistician General. I believe we have her back.
Broker's side. Finance created 103,000 jobs, followed by private households. So one of the things that we are seeing...
We can hold. They lost us. They lost... Okay.
One of the things that we are seeing is that our economy coming out of COVID-19 is showing a recovery. So we're seeing a post-COVID-19 recovery in that in the second quarter of 2020, our real economy was sitting at less than $1 trillion, about 920 billion. But now, in the third quarter of 2022, we're sitting at 1.161 trillion. So we are seeing a recovery, and that recovery is actually surpassing even pre-COVID times, but that is from the side of the economy. And we can only say from those that are commentators that an economy that is recovering will start to generate jobs.
Now, despite obviously the huge crisis within unemployment is youth unemployment, and we did see a dent in that drop in the number there. What are some of the insights we can take out of that? Because, analysts and experts who deal with youth unemployment, their concern being young people, especially graduates, might be getting those jobs, but they're often seasonal contracts, work that are internships that are not long-term employments. Are there any insights that we can get from that drop in youth unemployment from Q3 to Q4?
Firstly, according to the International Labour Organization, we are advised that as long as people can work, whether it's short term, if they can work for an hour a day, they are actually working. But now specifically to youth unemployment is that young people, especially those in ages 15 to 24, remain vulnerable to labour markets. Their unemployment rate is sitting at 61%. So are women. Their unemployment rate is generally higher than that of males. But particularly black African women, their unemployment rate is sitting at about 39.6%, which is far higher than the national unemployment rate of 32.7%. Having said so, let's go back to young people. We have about 10.2 young people aged 15 to 24 years in South Africa. Of those, about 3.4 million are not in employment, education, or training, meaning that they wake up every morning, they roam the streets, they have nothing to do because they are not in education facilities and they are not in any facilities for employment.
Now, during the Q&A, you did give us a brief insights into, private households, obviously facing a lot of pressure in South Africa, rising cost of living and so on. But in the third quarter, they were part of those, job sheds. But in this quarter, we are seeing them driving employment along with the finance and trade sectors. What can we read into that?
Firstly is that let us come from the third quarter, and there's always a lag. Our economy from the side of the GDP grew by 1.6%. And when you look at that, only an economy that is growing will be able to create employment. Our inflation from the CPI point of view is starting to decline. So the people in the private households are having enough income, potentially disposable income, to start creating employment. Because in the private households, when the economy is struggling, it's where we see jobs being shed the first. So private households, I suppose they have a little bit of space to be able to hire a bit more people in Ntokozo.
And are there any trends that South Africans can really look to when it comes to when jobs are being created, when jobs are being shared in the different sectors? As we saw, quarter to quarter, it may vary who is creating jobs, where those jobs are being shared. Are there any trends that the Stats SA office is seeing when it comes to economic activity and how that affects that movement?
Industries do show different behaviors quarter on quarter. But one thing that we have seen over a period of time is construction. Construction has been depressed for quite some time, and even in this quarter, it lost about 12,000 jobs. Although in the last quarter, it was starting to show a bit of a recovery. But generally, one of the biggest things we have seen, and maybe before I come to that, is in the second quarter of the year 2020, at the highest level of our lockdown, we had lost about 2 million jobs. We were sitting at 16.4 million people. We lost 2 million, down to 14.4 million. So one of the things that we are seeing in these 4 quarters, consecutive quarters in the year 2022, is that the recoveries in the job have put us on 15.8 million people employed. We haven't returned to the 16.4 million pre-COVID times. So one of the things we can say is that we are seeing jobs showing a recovery, and unemployment is starting to decline.
So certainly a slow but steady drop in that unemployment rate that we saw over 2022. Thank you so much for your time. Of course, that was Statistician General Risenga Maluleka just talking us through some of the numbers that he presented this morning when it comes to the unemployment rate. Of course, we did see that 0.2 percentage drop to 32.7% in the fourth quarter of 2022. And although he did say that he doesn't get encouraged or excited by numbers because sometimes he brings the good news and the bad news, it certainly is encouraging for South Africans to see that dent in unemployment being made, specifically youth unemployment, which remains a huge issue and a huge challenge to be tackled. That's where we'll leave it for now, Duduzile.
Thank you very much, Ntokozo Khumalo.